Welcome back to the Forging Alpha podcast. Caleb and Rick here, and today we have a pretty exciting topic to talk about. But if it's your first time on the podcast, we talk about fitness, nutrition, mindset, and what it takes to level up in life in general, but more specifically for the guys out there. And today we are talking about we're talking about HYROX training.
We're talking about HYROX, pretty hot topic right now. And
it is.
The fitness space in general. So we've just decided we're going to be doing one. But I think it's interesting also talking about from an inside perspective, like we've both been in the fitness industry, like I still do nutrition. But like what goes into that, and most people just hopping into it might not know too much, right? In terms of like they just think they're going to go and do a HYROX every single day, and like that's how you prep for something. But also, what brought this up for you? Like, what makes you want to do a HYROX?
So the first thing was when we had Eric on the podcast, probably 7 episodes ago, something like that, and he was talking about his training for the HYROX. He was having a lot of fun with it. And I think that's what kind of originally planted the seed. And then over the last couple months, I've been helping my lower back pain by moving around more, taking more walks and stuff. And I've been feeling better and better. And I've kind of had the urge to run, which is strange for me. I think it's probably the nicer weather and everything like that. But that's what got me thinking about it. And you've mentioned it a couple times. Dane and Dre at the office had mentioned planning one. So it sounds like it'd be a lot of fun. And like we've talked about on the podcast before, having a reason to train and having something on the calendar. So all those things combined, I think I want to do a HYROX.
Yeah, I agree. I think that for me, like having something on the calendar, especially post-athletics.
Yes.
It just makes things more intentional, and you're looking forward to it. You know in the back of your head that that's coming up. You probably don't want to embarrass yourself. I'm competitive. Like I would want to do this and not just be like the bare minimum. Like I want to actually feel pretty prepared going into it. So that's always in the back of my head when I'm preparing for something.
If my only hesitation when I was considering it was that I'm kind of an all-in type of person.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily want to be completely obsessed with it on the training and everything, but hey, we'll see how deep it goes.
But honestly, like
it's a good thing though.
It's a good thing because then, I mean, if you know that you did the best you can, given the circumstances, you're about to pop out a baby. Let the chips fall where they may. But at the same time, you could, like all the things we preach about, like most people don't take the jump because they're playing that what-if game or they've got to wait for the perfect time. And honestly, at this point in life, it's never going to be the perfect time. I was having this conversation with a client the other day. You know, we just started on the nutrition journey. It's something that he'd been putting off for the last couple of years because he runs a busy business. He's got 3 kids, and it's like, dude, you going to keep waiting for that perfect time, or are you just going to make it happen while you're busy? And then eventually when things do slow down a little bit, which it's never going to fully not be busy, unless you're dead, you're going to figure it out. So backing yourself into a corner and forcing yourself to figure it out is the best thing to do. Because, man, we all see it. I'm sure you see like business owners with who you guys work with or interview. They're like, we're going to wait on marketing till X, Y, and Z starts or the stars align. And how often does that ever happen?
Oh man, there's so many people that just push it down the road to wait for those stars to align. But the only way that you're going to get to the next step is by doing new things. It's the new action that's going to get there.
How many people come to you after like several months of trying to get to a better spot? And they're like, my business is just continually going downhill. It's never going to be better. Like, does that happen pretty often?
It does happen, especially in the B2B when it's a little bit longer of a deal cycle anyways. We have guys that'll wait 2, 3, 4, 5 months. And then they're like in a way worse off position because they're either one, still been paying for their marketing company that's getting shitty results, which we see all the time, and they're losing out on the momentum that they could have been building. Yeah. So the compounding effect of social media is delayed by 4 to 6 months. Well, that's a really big deal.
Yeah. But back to HYROX. What appeals to me about it, I think CrossFit's kind of stupid in terms of like what most people want out of CrossFit. Yeah. Great for community, great for just getting moving and having almost like a team atmosphere. In terms of like an exercise modality or programming, I mean, terrible. Everybody that I've ever worked with in CrossFit is always like has gotten injured just because 100%. Like you weren't meant to be doing high volume power cleans and Olympic lifts all the time. It's not really customized to like what your body needs. So like if you have shitty shoulders, too bad, you're going to have to go do kipping pull-ups or whatever it is. So at some point you're going to get injured. But I like watching the CrossFit Games. Like
it is
fun.
And
like they are specimens.
And I think it's such a cool idea.
Yeah.
And yeah, the games especially, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, 100%.
But the training, then everything that goes into it, and that's a little bit of survivorship bias, as the ones that are at the games are the ones that genetically apt to do well.
And a lot of them, probably at least 50%, are former D1 or Olympic swimmers, wrestlers. Like they're kind of built for that.
And also plenty of them dealing with injuries.
Yeah,
you just don't see it all the time.
Oh yeah, and most people they do that completely naturally. You're in a sport where like fitness is the main objective.
Yeah.
Like if performance enhancing drugs are involved in baseball and basketball and football, like what makes you think that a sport centered around exercise and like performing in exercise doesn't have that involved? They're on it. So that's not obviously helping the average person that's trying to replicate those things on much less sleep, worse diets, and inferior genetics. Sorry to put it that way, but let's be honest. So, but circling back to why HYROX I think is attractive is it kind of hits enough of that to where like it's functional, it's cardio based, like there's different things that look cool on paper to me. There's definitely that community aspect, but it's like standardized. You know what you're getting yourself into, where CrossFit, like you go to the CrossFit Games, you have no idea what they're planning for. HYROX is HYROX. And so like that's an attractive thing because like you kind of know what you're getting yourself into, what to prepare for, and I think that I could do that.
I also like that the running part's not that far.
You don't have to go run a half?
100%. I'm excited to run, and that's something when I was growing up I was pretty gifted at.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to incorporate that, just not running real far.
And I've always, I've had it on my journal, doing something that, was outside of kind of lifting. So I had I was like, it'd be pretty cool to run a half marathon at some point in my life. It'd be cool to do like a half Ironman, but neither of those things I don't necessarily want to do. It's more so like checking that off and challenging myself. HYROX kind of aligns more of something that I like doing.
I think it would actually be enjoyable. I think the training for it would be enjoyable. I think the competition side and actually doing the HYROX would be enjoyable.
Yeah, got to get back in the groove of all those pulls that I ran in college for baseball. Get back in the rhythm for that. The interesting thing, like going on to the training side and how you prep for it, though, too. I think Eric, we were having this discussion before, and he was pretty smart about his programming when people prep for this. You don't just do you do the movements to get good at them, but also the thing that interests me about this is you don't have to just do HYROX movements to get prepared for them, right? Like you're doing things that are going to improve that system. So like for running, you don't have to just run. Like if you're running those half mile sprints, if you're building up your aerobic system, you could be doing multiple forms of cardio for that. It doesn't just have to be running, right?
One of my largest drawbacks to CrossFit from the outside looking in is the technical aspect that's required on so many of the movements, like a handstand walk. It's super impressive. That's awesome. I'm a really strong guy.
Yeah.
I haven't been good at handstand walks because I haven't put a lot of time into practicing
snatches,
the skill of that.
The 100%. Olympic lifts, yeah.
But with the HYROX, there's maybe a little bit of a technical skill to it to a degree, but much smaller.
Yeah. So you could be like, you don't have to just be running.
Exactly.
Your knees are getting beat up. Like if you go get really good at sprinting on a bike, that's going to translate into your cardio system for running. The lunging aspect of it. You could go do 20, 30 reps of trap bar deadlifts, and that's going to be a similar joint angle. You're going to be working that system. Like people think in training in terms of just movements. And so to get good at a movement or get good at that thing, you've got to train that. But actually it's more like systems,
100%.
like your cardio system, which is your aerobic system, your anaerobic system, which HYROX is more like anaerobic, where it's kind of it's a hybrid of strength and cardio. And so if you're training different things that are within an anaerobic setting, it's going to have a carryover effect into those different movements, which are like sled pulls, sled pushes, farmer's walks. So obviously, you train those things to get good at it, but you can avoid injuries and overuse by having a blend of training, which is kind of attractive to me, of like, this is going to add some more variety, more athleticism back into my training. And honestly, this is something where I can see it still implementing the bodybuilding side of things, because you still have to be training like muscular endurance. So, you can still be doing bodybuilding stuff. You still have to have strength within those movements. So you can still incorporate like a bodybuilding aspect of it, because you're not having to go in and do Olympic lifts that are so technique driven.
And let's be honest, you also want to look jacked while you're doing the HYROX, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So I threw it into ChatGPT to pull up like kind of what the most ones would make sense for us logistically, as far as if we were to do the actual HYROX competition. We've got 3 options it gave us for later in 2025, with a Chicago, that's October 18th, November 15th in Dallas, and then December 6th in Denver. I think kind of all of those sound like pretty good options.
We're going to be having the baby end of September or beginning of October. So
Chicago might be a poor choice, is what you're saying?
Could be. I mean, I'm probably not taking the family with me. What I'm saying is, like, there's probably going to be a couple weeks there that's not going to be the most optimal for training leading up to. Yeah.
And also maybe not the most ideal to plan something around if we've got a time window.
And I also think that, like, I feel comfortable enough with that time window training wise. Like, I feel we're giving ourselves enough bandwidth if we do like a November or December.
I totally agree.
And a great way to cap off the year.
Ooh, that's a good point. And if we do it too close and rush it, it just like, we could do it, or we could be more prepared and just enjoy the journey leading up to it.
And the cool thing is like, I feel like this is why it's becoming more popular than CrossFit for the average person, is that, you could just throw yourself into it and go. I think there's time cutoffs, but you could also use it as maybe a shorter timeline and use that as kind of as a fitness aspect, where you just want to roll into it, see where you're at, and that's going to be a workout in and of itself. You're not trying to win. But if you want to be competitive, you could also train longer and go into it and get a purpose out of either being competitive for it or just using it for, like, you want to go in there and you want to get a great workout at the competition. Like, I feel like it's a little bit lower key than like the CrossFit Open and then the CrossFit Regionals and stuff. Like, people go and do those with a base level of fitness, but they don't all have to just go and win.
100%.
Right?
You can like be really competitive with it, or you can just show up. Like, there's plenty of people that do a half marathon and the only objective is to finish the half marathon.
Yes.
And then there's people that are out there trying to beat their own time, or maybe they have some goal that they
That's
have
a good
in
comparison.
mind. Yeah. And then there's also people that are trying to win it, and they're going to be upset with anything that's not a first place.
Yeah.
But you can all do it together. And I think that's the cool part about it, where you're right with CrossFit. It's like, I wouldn't imagine there's a lot of people that show up to competitions to just to do it, see where they're at.
Yeah.
At least I probably
Most
wouldn't.
people that do CrossFit don't go to competitions for CrossFit.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why it's cool that it gives you something you can put on the calendar and you can compete right beside the people that are crushing it, the pros, or however the divisions break down.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, let's get that on the calendar and just roll with it. What is that saying that you're it's an Asian, I think a Japanese saying, you're ikagi? Might be blowing that off, but it's kind of like the highlight of your year. Like, you're working towards one big, like one big major event for the year. I think it's, your ikagi. So I'm probably butchering that, but it's something along those lines that
I'm familiar with what you're trying to reference.
That you're putting on the calendar per year. So I like that. And
something that challenges you and to work towards.
Yeah.
What's the last thing you did that was like that? What's the last thing you competed in?
Probably that powerlifting competition that we did in Manhattan.
Oh, yeah.
That was...
So you did the year after me.
No, I did it. I did it there with you.
We both competed on that year?
Yeah.
Okay, you're right.
That was the last one I did. I didn't
Then you went to coach the following year. Or the 2 years before.
That was last year.
You're right.
Yeah. Was it this year? No, it was last year.
Okay.
They just all blended together.
Really
that was recent. So coaching, but not actual competing. And I like the variety of this too. Like, powerlifting, dude, it's unmatched. Like, when you're at the meets and the competition and everything, super cool.
I've been doing that for so long though. I think I'm ready for that next step. Also because I know if I just like jumped into powerlifting meet now, it'd still be fun. But if I wasn't hitting PRs, I don't think I'd have near as much fun with it. And I know what it takes to hit some PRs in powerlifting at this point, and that'd be some pretty serious training to top where I was
the
at.
challenge too for me that I like thinking about is nutrition plays so much bigger of a role in HYROX.
As opposed to just a strength sport.
Yes. Obviously still important. Like the last one that I coached through, night and day for her because she's like, this is the first meet that I was at that like nutrition was involved. And like I was able to maintain my momentum all the way through that, which it's good. It's there, it's present, it's needed. But also there's some good power lifters that can roll out of bed and they don't need it. But I feel like with endurance sports, whether it's like running or marathons or Ironman, obstacle course racing, like it is a non-negotiable. If you don't feel accordingly, like you can't just be genetically superior with like endurance stuff or cardio based stuff and make it happen. So I feel like that's going to be an interesting challenge too, is like fueling for performance in that aspect and having those thought processes go. Honestly, I'd love to work with more HYROX athletes because like it's kind of fun. I've worked with people in 100-mile races, and like it's like you've got to have things dialed in, and it's got to be structured, and it's a non-negotiable for that. So I think HYROX would also challenge me a little bit in that sense.
Let's document some of our training leading up to it. We'll figure out what that looks like. So we'll kind of take the listeners along, and hopefully, if there's people that want to join in on this HYROX once we figure out the date, they can join the training with us.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to my buddy AJ after this, but I think I might, like for me personally, this would be kind of going back to a hybrid West Side barbell method. Most people are you familiar with West Side barbell much?
Yeah.
So they actually train a lot of like sprinters and like Olympic athletes.
They're the ones that do daily undulated training programs, right?
Conjugate
okay.
training, which is kind of like hybrid training, which is kind of like what this is. So, and the thing about that is it's not like set around powerlifting, which most people think like West Side barbell powerlifting. A lot of their clientele are actually like they do like a lot of CrossFitters train at West Side barbell because like conjugate essentially just means you're building multiple fitness characteristics at once. It's not undulating. I'll think of the term. Maybe I won't. But, you're building up speed, strength, kind of all together versus like your traditional block training where maybe you focus on hypertrophy and strength, concurrent training, which, HYROX is kind of a concurrent sport. So yeah, it'll be, I think, a fun thing because it's definitely involves some bodybuilding stuff in there, but also like the cardiovascular stuff's going to be back in there.
It's well-rounded.
Yeah, I've got a sled, so I'll be doing some more sled pulling. We'll have to get a.
I'm working a deal on a rower right now.
Are you?
Yeah.
Oh, because the rower's in there.
I'm gonna get it, but I've got my eye on that. We're gonna need to get a ski erg, or at least access to ski erg, right?
Yep.
I think I've only used a ski erg like one time. I'm probably underestimating what that's going to do to me the first time. Especially
like in combination with everything else. But then again, like those are fun. Like when I do cardio, that's a lot of the stuff I do now. Yeah. I don't do as much ski erg, but when I was at Woodside more, I would do ski erg a lot. I would do a lot of sled pushes and a lot of sled pulls. So it's a lot more fun version of cardio, but it's also going to force you to run. So anyway, kind of being a dead horse there, but yeah, it'll be interesting. We got to get access to a prowler as well for doing some pushes, big sled pushes. Did you see the video that Jason posted about Flex moving locations?
No,
they're officially moving locations with bigger turf. Bigger area. I think it's like 5 minutes away from the current location. So
that's fantastic.
That could be our solution.
Awesome.
Yeah. You have to become a kettlebell bro.
Ooh,
I don't know if there's kettlebells involved though. Is there?
Yeah. What are the kettlebells for?
I think the kettlebell's for lunges. I think they lunge with kettlebells. I think
it's a sandbag, right?
Is it?
I thought I saw a photo of somebody with like a sandbag or something on top.
It probably is.
It could be kettlebells for the farmer's carry though.
Could be. That's maybe what I'm thinking.
That would make sense, right?
Yeah.
Do you know how? We could look it up. Do you know how heavy the farmers carry?
Look it up, dude. Pull out the old Chat GPT. So this is also something that'll be interesting because this is, and we were just talking about it a little bit, there is a growing population within the fitness industry of a new classification of supplements and drugs around mitochondrial enhancers. And like a lot of the Olympic athletes were using these things. This would definitely be something that I imagine is involved in HYROX. And it would probably be something that would be beneficial for training because, so these things like your cells dictate how you perform and your health status, right? So like ATP production, which is essentially like explosive movement fuel. Some of these things that people are using, like in the CrossFit space, in the Olympic space, they help one from a health standpoint, but also like benefiting endurance. And so I'm interested how much that's involved in HYROX because that's a growing field. It's being used in the bodybuilding space too right now. So there's a guy named Dr. Dean St. Martin. He was talking about this. He did an entire prep last year. He didn't do any formal cardio, 10,000 steps. He won the British Grand Prix, which is still like an amateur bodybuilding show, but he was eating 3,500 calories the entire time, training 4 days a week, and like got stage lean, using less of the like traditional bodybuilding drugs for fat loss, like your clenbuterols, your stimulant-based ones, relying more on like these mitochondrial enhancers. One of them being like methylene blue. So methylene blue is a mitochondrial enhancer. So there's other things coming up. One of them is called SLU, PP332. Experimental. It's not in clinical trials at all, but it's along the same lines of like mitochondrial enhancement like methylene blue does from a different angle. So people within different aspects like HYROX and CrossFit, even the Olympics, are using more of those things like methylene blues and those SLUs for health, cognition, but also drastically improves performance. I noticed, like, have you ever used methylene blue?
One time I've tried it. So not consistently.
When I've used a pre-workout, there's a noticeable increase in endurance. Yeah.
It might be interesting to do like a little bit of a control here and do one with some special enhancements and then run another one back without.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to see like what percentage of an increase you find with that type of stuff. It's such a hard thing to study for.
I feel like, yeah, I mean, it's hard to quantify it, but I mean, it makes sense. And I could almost guarantee that it would, I mean, if you're providing, so the thing too with like, so you got mitochondrial enhancers, which are like your cells, powerhouses. What these things are doing, like they're helping to donate more electrons and ATP and fuel, like take your food and be able to push more fuel into them. Well, if your cells are using more fuel more efficiently, because that's what you're burning off during exercise, and a lot of times when you get gassed out, it's because like you're running out of fuel sources or you're not utilizing fuel sources efficiently. Like if you're doing that at a better pace, you're going to have more endurance, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah. And I've actually started experimenting around with some of my CrossFit clients using these things, and it's like, yeah, it's pretty noticeable. So
hell yeah.
Kind of a little off-topic thing, because I think in the health space, we're going to start seeing those things becoming more prevalent. I mean, methylene blue's blown up.
Has
I
it?
started, oh, dude. Like when you start seeing 10X Health and Grant Cardone's company, like they've now got a methylene blue product, yeah, it's becoming more popular, mainstream, per se. So it's definitely becoming a fad. But like anything, you got to be careful with these things. They're not a magic pill, but we're in an interesting time and place within the fitness industry and the health industry, because you're getting some of these things that kind of have an overlap.
Yeah.
Like methylene blue is, on paper going to improve some health things. If used smartly, dose dependent, like it was originally created in a health purpose setting. So yeah, I mean, we're kind of getting to this phase where you're seeing things that, like most bodybuilding, not typically healthy with preps and stuff. But we're kind of getting to these things now where it might be also improving body composition, endurance, but also like some of your health stuff.
That's exciting when it's well-rounded, its benefits across the board. That's exciting.
I'll tell you an example of that too. Some of these GLPs that are coming out. So now Ozempic is kind of a dinosaur now. It's a GLP-1. GLP-1 essentially just tells your brain to stop communicating with your stomach. So it reduces your appetite. You stop eating as much because of that, and a little bit of like insulin sensitivity. So you're going to be more responsive to food and utilize it better. There are now GLP-3s, and there's GLP-4 and 5s on the market. So they're adding different pathways that these things are working on. So the GLP-3, it's in stage 2 clinical trials right now. It actually directly burns fat versus like the GLP-1 just reduces your appetite. So you create a calorie deficit with that. So another aspect, like bodybuilders are starting to use more of those. GLP like ones, like there's some issues with maybe losing a little bit of muscle mass. With these added pathways that they're adding to these drugs, they can actually help preserve muscle mass. So like they're adding in like growth hormone pathways now with these ones that are in future renditions. But so put it in perspective, there's a guy I was talking to that started taking that GLP-3. His cholesterol, his A1C, and his insulin improved better than when he was on statins.
Wow.
And it helped him drop body fat. He didn't have to do hours of cardio, didn't change too much up with his diet. So like there's definitely, things you need to be focusing on. But that was at a microdose level where it wasn't causing any side effects. Like he obviously was dialing other aspects, but it's pretty crazy. Like, yes, those are being used like in more of a health or a fitness aspect, but like the implications that those are going to have for people with health is pretty crazy. So there's kind of this weird combining of like fitness space and health space that's happening.
The fitness space with the biohacking and just the overall wellness is all kind of coming together, and it's exciting, especially for the future of supplementation. I mean, if you look at how far it's came in the last 10 years, what it's going to do in the next 10 is pretty crazy.
Yeah. But back to HYROX, dude. What else you got to say about HYROX?
I'm excited to be training for it. What do you think your initial training is going to look like? Have you put any thought into that? Because I know you've been, I don't know how far down the consideration road you've gotten, but I know it's at least been an idea that you were considering already.
Yeah, I think that would be something where if we're gonna shoot for later on this year, it would probably stick with a 4 or 5 day split for the time being, and kind of going off, West Side Barbell principles. This would be more of like a GPP phase for the next few months, where we're like a general physical preparedness phase. Like their whole premise too with it is it's like systems. So the further out you are from an athletic season, a competition, or something like this, like you got to build up your base. So like your GPP, and that can look like a bunch of different things. But my GPP for running and cardio ain't that great right now. So these next few months would be building that up, and that would be like more variety of movement. So that would probably be still having, I'd still say probably 2 days of bodybuilding-esque stuff, but maybe I'm focusing more on higher rep endurance work to build up that system, and 2 days that are more, I'd say, functional. Like we're probably starting to implement more sled stuff, farmers walks.
Real quick to add context, I just realized I never gave you the answers on the specific events for people that aren't familiar.
That would be good.
There's a 1,000-meter ski erg, a sled push, which is 2 by 25 meters. It looks like the men's open is 152 kilograms, including the sled. Did you mention that's a prowler?
I mean, the push is going to have some kind of prowler. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a prowler setup.
And then there's a sled pull, which is another 2 by 25 meters. This time it's 103 kilograms. We've got a burpee broad jump, which is 80 meters. Now, in my head, that's you do a burpee.
Burpee, come up,
do a broad jump.
Yeah.
Just as far as you can. Do another burpee.
Yeah.
Okay. That's for 80 meters. There's a 1,000-meter row, There's a 200-meter farmer's carry, which is with two 24-kilogram kettlebells on the men's open.
224. So that's like
50 pounds.
50-something pounds, yeah. And how far is that?
200 meters.
That's probably pretty deep. I don't know how. Dude, they got to give me something. Give me some yards.
Half lap around the track.
Okay, that's pretty far.
That's what I was thinking is like 50 pounds isn't that much, but then I'm thinking, well, okay, maybe for the first 100 feet, but what about...
The endurance is going to come
It's going to hit you.
For this.
Absolutely. And then we've got sandbag lunges, which is a 20-kilogram sandbag, and wall balls, which is 100 repetitions of a 6-kilogram ball at a 10-foot target.
Mm.
And is that, I don't know if that's like a squat and then throw the ball up or what.
Wall balls is, throw it up, catch into squat, up. So yeah, you got to hit, you probably have to hit depth on those. Yeah.
And then obviously the runs in between.
And then the runs in between, which is a half-mile run in between.
Yep, a kilometer.
So for me, like in my mind as I'm setting this up, starting out with 4 days per week, building up the base, definitely with some of that aerobic stuff, a lot more sled pulls, probably for time to build up kind of that endurance aspect, which will translate more into the running. Probably add in 1 run per week to start out with and start periodizing that up. So this far out, focusing more on general stuff, focusing more on systems, which is going to be more anaerobic, building that up, kettlebell swings for time. I mean, more kind of like CrossFit-esque, but having some structure to it in accordance with like a couple bodybuilding things. So I still do enjoy that, and I can keep that in this far out. And then as you start moving closer, that's when you go from more general stuff that you're focusing on the systems to like the actual movements that you're going to be doing. It's kind of the same concept as powerlifting, right? Like you start out off season, you're doing more hypertrophy work, stuff to build up different systems. And then as you get closer to a meet, like you're
More
dialing more
sport
on the
specific.
big 3. Yes.
Yep.
So I see it being kind of that structure. And then, probably have testing points along the way where you're testing out half. I'd probably throughout the course of this time, probably put in 2 full ones as a testing parameter. I don't think it's, that intensive that you'd ruin kind of your training doing that. Like, for example, if you're doing an Ironman, you're typically never doing a full Ironman until that day, just because it's so intensive, so consuming that you're not going to put that into your training.
Yeah, and it's like you can't kind of half-ass an Ironman.
No.
Like if you finish the Ironman, you put in some work.
Yeah.
With HYROX, like you could do 50%, 75% effort level and still do the whole HYROX just over an expanded time frame.
Yep.
It's not like it's going to be any less taxing if you finish the triathlon over 3 days and you kind of ease into it,
100%. I think, and why that structure I think is going to be good and it's going to be helpful is because like you could just start training and doing all of those movements and that's going to help you improve to a certain point, but eventually just like running to run, like you're going to get faster to a certain point, but then you're not going to keep getting faster indefinitely. You got to go focus then on weak points to improve your speed after that. So like if your hamstrings are piss poor, you probably should improve your hamstring strength and your glute strength, which is then going to translate over to that. So I think those same principles are going to apply for some of this HYROX training of like not just doing like those movements to get better at it, because you'll improve that and you got to do that at a certain point to get good at those movements. But also looking like what the weak points are going to be. For me, it's going to be my lungs and it's going to be my legs. So building up kind of like that lactic threshold. And I know for me, if I just start doing too much running, I'm going to start suffering and not be able to train as intensely. So I can't just go straight into running, as much as that's going to be. So focusing on building up those systems, building up those weak points, and then really start getting good at that as we start getting closer. So that's how I kind of foresee it. How about you?
The same, man.
Yeah.
I'm going to take your guidance and we're going to train hard and it's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm kind of excited for this too, because I think this is a lot of stuff like we could get outside and do some training on. We could go to, find like a football field on some turf and do that.
I've been wanting to find a reason to train like an athlete again, just because it feels good the way you move throughout the day. And thinking about baby girl being on the way in July, I want to be able to move around and play with her. And we've talked about like the benefits of having different movement patterns and how helpful that can be. And I think this is just a really great opportunity to combine a whole bunch of good things in one nice package.
And I think it's going to make me do more mobility. I'm going to probably take care of my warm-ups a little bit better. I'm going to do a little more stretching just because in my mind, like, I'm not just going to be going and doing leg press.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited.
I am too.
Well, any closing thoughts?
Go out and crush it.
Go out and crush it. Let us know if you need anything, and we'll see you on the next one.
All right.
Peace.